I've had this topic written down for weeks now, but due to what happened in yesterday's video, and how the dude was doing what he was doing in church, it's a good way to transition to this topic now. There's a verse in the Bible that someone mentioned to me a while back when I was on Hinge, the dating app. One girl who I was talking to was very traditionally Christian. And the way she explained this to me, I think it's very misinterpreted. But, I mean, you can't tell Christian elitists anything, you know what I'm saying? So the verse is this, Matthew chapter 5, verse 28. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. She used this verse as a critique and judgment towards people who watch or consume media related to any romantic themes, like romantic Netflix shows or movies, right? Her argument was that if you do consume anything romantic themed or experience involuntary thoughts because of your romantic or perverted themes, then it is spiritually impure. So let's say you watch an anime and two characters in the show fall in love or are secretly holding feelings for each other. You know what I'm talking about, right? And it reminds you that, that somebody, you used to crush on somebody too. Or maybe it made you sad that you can't find love like this, or you don't have someone to crush on. That's considered in her conservative Christian circle as spiritually impure. If you're watching anime or anything and you become fanned out over a character, right? Yeah, because I know y'all love waifus and y'all love your video game characters, right? Because maybe you find them attractive or you think that character is cute or something or whatever, right? That's also spiritually impure and is sinful. And I get where she's coming from, but my issue with her interpretation is that, first of all, before we even make counter arguments to the Bible verse, right? It's a bit hypocritical that you're using this verse that, anyone who looks at women lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. I think it's hypocritical to use that verse to judge people, yet you're on a dating app. And to make things even more strange, I'm not saying based on your preferences, I'm just saying it's just strange that you're using it to judge people. You swing both ways. You're bisexual. So, I mean, I wonder what your app looks like. But I guess you can make the argument that this doesn't apply to her because the verse specifically mentions a man looking at a woman lustfully, which, so if you want to be Bible literalist, then we can argue in her favor, right? Apparently it's okay for her. Regardless, I just feel it's a little bit hypocritical, okay? But then again, I don't take the Bible literally. I think it's more of an esoteric roadmap, not something to scientifically or over-rationalize based on literal writings, right? The way I interpret that Bible verse is way different. To me, I interpret it as being related to the 10th commandment, thou shalt not covet. Having natural desires or responses to what you see is biological, y'all. Testosterone and estrogen can create natural attraction. Furthermore, having natural desires that come from your emotional needs, your subconscious process, or even stress, even psychologists will tell you that suppressing your emotional needs and subconscious processes can lead to anxiety issues, depression, or even compulsive behaviors. Suppressing yourself can actually have the opposite effect on people. Or have opposite effect on you. You know what I'm saying? You ever keep something so suppressed, next thing you know, it just like blurts out? Like, my point is, this is part of the human experience, to be attracted to things. If we use this verse or the Bible in general, which a lot of people do already, to weaponize, shame, exert your power, or suppress vulnerabilities in a way to guilt trip people, especially young, impressionable minds, I think that's very malicious. I think that's messed up. Now, when I mentioned the 10th commandment and how it goes back to that, thou shalt not covet, right? To covet is to heavily desire something to the point of envy, or to desire something so badly it's attached with a negative emotion towards the person or whatever that has something that you don't have. In my interpretation of this verse from Matthew and the context of how Jesus spoke and treated others, I interpret this as it is sinful to lust if your desire turns into a covet. If you have thoughts and fantasies about somebody, that's way different than plotting. You know what I'm saying? That's way different than plotting to seduce them or do this and that. We could get dark and we could get deeper into that. That's way different than pursuing somebody. You know what I'm saying? Just like Just thinking about somebody, just like, they're attractive, and wow, she's hot, she's cute, or you fantasize about them, just way different, But the verse says we're going to be literalists here. We're going to take it literally. But if you look at them that way, like fantasizing or thinking about them lustfully, then you already committed the crime. However, what I think that crime really is, or what it's really trying to say, is a metaphor about how sinful behavior originates in your subconscious mind or your imagination. It originates there. If you're internally hyperfixated on something, like your lust, it will externalize into your actions. When you let your bodily desire possess your mind, but you can't keep it in check, or you obsess over something so much mentally, but you don't keep that in check, there is never something good that comes out of that. Am I lying? Obsessing over something is never good, especially if it's going to cause problems or disharmony to others or yourself. So when you do look at women lustfully, like Matthew says, well, not Matthew, but in the book of Matthew, you are committing a sin, in a sense that you're already setting the foundation to potentially get fixated on something. So what Jesus is trying to say is like, don't take this literally. What Jesus is trying to say, especially in that time period in history, you feel me? You know what I'm saying? What is being said is not condemning natural thought, desires, or fantasy. It's a metaphorical warning that sin doesn't start with the act. Read the verse again. But I tell you, and I didn't even mention this part, but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Sin doesn't start by the action here. What's being told here. Sin doesn't start by the action. It was already in your heart. It said, you just look. You didn't commit adultery yet, but it's in your heart, the very thing, symbolically speaking, the heart, those internal thought that processes your mind without stray. When people say, it's in my heart to do something, it's in my heart to feel this way, right? When people say, I'm heartbroken, the heart is that internal obsession that possesses your mind without restraint. That's why people say it's in my heart to do something, or like my heart is controlling my mind, whatever people say, right? You know what I'm talking about, all those heart metaphors. You didn't need the action. You have internal issues already. It's already in your heart. You already had that negative thought in your heart. And if you have internal issues that you have no restraint over, and you're looking at women lustfully, and you have no restraint over your lust, you're probably coveting, plotting, ready to externalize. And again, nothing ever good comes out of that. If you don't keep your obsessive desires checked, rarely anything positive comes out of it. Even if you somehow think your intentions weren't bad, you let it overtake you. That's what Jesus was alluding to in this thought process. Don't take it literally. It doesn't mean you just can't look at people. You can't be attracted to things. You can't watch romantic films or anything related to that you find attractive. That doesn't mean that. Don't take Bible verses literally to begin with, okay? Look, the point is, you committed the crime just thinking about doing something that you shouldn't be doing to begin with. That's what is being metaphorically told here. Prevent this mental thought bubble from externalizing and manifesting. But if you do internal work on not thinking about it, or looking at things in ways that would encourage these destructive thoughts, but these destructive thought bubbles you struggle to restrain or are becoming obsessed with, you're going to end up getting cooked out here. Does this make sense? I just don't agree with what she's saying. Like, I think it's way too literal. It's way too controlling. It's being used to judge and suppress people who don't understand their psychological and biological needs. You're gonna look at things. You're gonna see things. This verse is about balance. You're always gonna have your attention caught up by something attractive to you, but you gotta balance it though. If you don't, this is where coveting comes from. If you don't balance your thought, this is where adultery comes from. Those two commandments not to break. And how many times, and this is where things lead to the next things. How many times have people who have coveted broke into other commandments? You jealous? You envy of what someone else has? You're obsessively desirous over something that you don't have right now? Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not steal, etc., etc. See what happens when you start getting obsessed? Anyway, point is, control yourself. What do you guys think? This episode is found on Spotify and YouTube. I'm out.